These are the stories of Careblazers, the stories of husbands, wives, sons, and daughters whose world is forever changed since caring for their loved one with dementia. You'll hear stories of heartbreak. You'll hear stories of love. These stories are real, raw, and powerful. I hope these stories show you you're not alone, and I hope they give you some inspiration and help as you go through your caregiving journey. Holly, thank you so much for being willing to share your story today with other Careblazers. Take a moment to tell us a little bit about yourself and who you care for.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Natalie. I'm Holly, and I'm married to my husband, Mark, for 39 years. We have a daughter and son-in-law and two little granddaughters. And my loved one with dementia is my mother. She's 88, and now she lives in a memory care facility in the town where I live. About 5 years ago, she moved from her small town where she'd lived for over 60 years to be closer to us. She was very unselfish in that. She wanted our helping her in her later years to be easy on us. And so she made that decision, and we helped her move. And I guess that's really kind of when my caregiving journey began. About 6 months after she moved, she had a triple bypass heart surgery. And she really recovered physically very well from that. But it was after that we really began to see some decline in her cognitive function, and she required more and more help over the next few years, until about a year and a half ago we saw that it just really wasn't safe for her to live alone. She had been living in a small garden home in our neighborhood, so we could spend a lot of time with her and check on her, but living independently, until we saw that it just really wasn't safe. And that's when we made a decision to move to assisted living. Unfortunately, that was in February of 2020, and in March, COVID hit, and everything locked down. So all the benefits that we envisioned for her, the socialization, the increased activity, all those things were out the window with COVID.
Yeah. So she was pretty much, she like took the foresight, just knowing she was getting older and she was going to need some help. She decided to move closer to you guys. And at that point, she didn't have any cognitive impairment that anybody was aware of, or she was functioning cognitively pretty well, but just kind of planning for her future and wanting to make life easier for you guys.
Yes, I couldn't tell. During the move, I noticed a few things. She was not maybe quite as sharp as she used to be, but she was 83. So, and she was leaving everything she had known for all those years. So a lot of loss in that.
Right.
So I just attributed the things I was seeing to maybe normal aging, maybe adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, I had not been around her daily in all these years. We had never lived in the same town since I was a teenager.
Right.
So, but she was still very, very independent at that point.
So when you mentioned after the heart surgery, you started noticing some things that made you think maybe she's not safe to live at home alone anymore. What kinds of things were you noticing?
Well, there were some of the typical things that you see as she started having difficulty keeping up with her bills, preparing meals. She just kind of quit doing things. She kind of quit preparing her meals. She kind of quit initiating any activities. She quit getting dressed unless there was something specific to do. She started making mistakes with her medicine, and that for me was a biggie. At that point, I found a part-time caregiver to come in a few hours a day just to be the one to make sure she took her medicine, to do some other things for her, so I could not be so bossy. Because I think that's the way she perceived me, as a little bossy. She fell prey to phone solicitors.
Mm.
She got really kind of OCD about, hyper focused on things that weren't very important and neglected things that were important.
Mm.
There were some weird kind of things, like she was kind of, I think, auditory hallucinations, things she would hear in the house, noises, and she was irrationally afraid at night and would lock herself in her bedroom. So those were kind of unusual. But there was a moment when I just knew something wasn't right. And that was the day that she argued with me about when my dad's birthday was. Mm. And they'd been married for 58 years. Birthdays were a big deal. And there is just no way she would not know when his birthday was. So that was kind of my big red flag. She lived in a house that she was leasing. It had a gas stove. She had never cooked on gas in her life before she moved into this house, and that worried me. Mm-hmm. You know, that just didn't seem like a safe thing. So those were some of the things.
Did she recognize that she was struggling more cognitively?
I think she did. I think she thought if she didn't talk about it, that maybe it wouldn't be true. There were a time or two when we would go to have a doctor's appointment, and I would ask her if there was anything she wanted to talk about, and she said, well, I just don't want you to have to deal with Alzheimer's or something like that. Mm-hmm. She just out of the blue, she would say that. So I think she recognized it, but she just thought if she didn't name it, it wouldn't be true.
Now, did she ever get a formal dementia diagnosis?
No.
Okay.
All the things that you read say, talk to your primary care physician, talk to your, and at that point I was going to the doctor with her, and I just didn't get the kind of help from her primary care physician that I really hoped for. She did do a couple of mini cognitive screenings, mm-hmm. about a year apart, and she did order a few tests to rule out some physical causes, but I could never get her internist to put dementia on her chart. Wow. Which I really wanted, because I felt like if she had to go in the hospital for anything, they needed to know that. Her doctor didn't really think that at her age and with the kind of issues that I was talking about, that it would be helpful to start one of the dementia drugs. Mm-hmm. She did offer to refer her to a neurologist, but she just didn't really encourage all the testing, mm-hmm. That they would. So we didn't pursue a definitive diagnosis.
Yeah, I mean, that happens quite a lot. It really does. I'm curious if you think that the doctor realized something was going on and just didn't think it was worthwhile to pursue, or if the doctor just didn't really think much was going on besides typical aging. Did you get any sort of feel on that?
I think the latter. I think, my friend has joined us. This is I think my mom really put a good impression. I've heard some people call it showtimers. And I think, the doctor just didn't realize. And I did everything I could. I wrote out things I was seeing and gave them to the doctor before the appointment, but and she never ever said, I think you might need to be thinking about the future and about getting more help, or I don't think she realized.
So when it came to realizing your mom wasn't safe to be alone anymore and just kind of realizing some of the things your mom was doing, did you have any idea what dementia was or Alzheimer's was? Like, was this floating through your mind?
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
How,
I had,
how did you know? Like, how did you even know or learn about that?
well, my grandmother had some sort of dementia, my aunt,
Okay.
on my dad's side. And then my dad lived to 92, but in the last few years we saw some cognitive decline for him. So I had seen that. I had visited Alzheimer's Association back when we were seeing that with him. And so I knew. And then I just started looking for help, looking for information. Yeah, I knew something was going on. I hoped maybe it was not as bad as I thought. I really think I thought she would maybe move into assisted living where she could have all the cues and the benefits from social. She's very social, and the activity that she would really thrive in that kind of environment more so than alone at home. So,
When
yeah.
you first brought up like getting help into the home for her, was she open to that help coming into the home?
She was. She didn't complain or resist that, but she wouldn't really. That caregiver was really not able to motivate her to get up and get dressed. I had hoped that that caregiver might get her out, take her somewhere, might prepare meals with her, do some things, but my mom would just sit and let that caregiver just clean or clean out her closet or polish the silver or something like that. So I think that caregiver was not real familiar with dementia and didn't really know how to engage her. But she didn't object. And by that point, she didn't, she questioned a time or two about the cost, but I just kind of glossed over that. I was paying for it. I was on her account, banking account. And so I paid for it without her having to be involved.
Were you always on her bank account, or at what point did you go on her bank account?
That's a good question. When she moved to
Yeah.
our town and we set up new accounts, that's when I got on her banking account. She had already done power of attorney, medical power of attorney several years before after my dad passed away. So all that was already in place. And so that she made it really easy. I really think she prepared well for the future. Yeah.
That's nice.
Mhm.
And then do you remember what you specifically said to your mom when you first hired help to come in the home? Like, how did you introduce her to the idea?
Um, I think I mentioned that, when my grandmother was older, um, that she and my dad provided some extra help for her, and I thought it would be really nice, and that it would help me because I was working, I was traveling, I was helping to support and care for our daughter and little grandchildren when they were, they didn't live in the same town. So I would travel to help them or they would be with us. And I just told her it would really help me because I couldn't be there with her all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's the selling point for everything for her. If it would help me, she's usually willing to do it. So,
Wow. And how did you bring up the topic of assisted living?
yeah, that was, oh man, that was a conversation that I agonized over for just a long time. But I had already been looking at assisted livings, local ones, and she had a health crisis. My mom had a health crisis. She had some blood clots in her lungs and had to go on a blood thinner. And so we used that as our point that those medications we just couldn't have any mistakes with those medications, and that we were concerned about her safety. And then we thought that it was time for her to live where someone could help her with the medicines and be available all the time, keep an eye on her, make sure she's safe. So that's the way we approached it. And then we moved really fast. We had that conversation and moved 2 weeks later.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. And so you didn't even really make it about her dementia or problems, safety issues in terms of thinking.
No, we didn't. We didn't.
And then go ahead.
Well, she was just compliant. She said, well, I don't really want to, but if you think that's the best thing. So, yeah.
And then how did she adjust to the place?
Well, she adjusted great at first. First couple of weeks were great. She was, we did a lot to try to make it feel like home for her, using her things. And she did great.
You prepared her room with things that looked from her home.
And it was great at first. And then she had a bout of a flare up with a back pain, and she didn't sleep well for a few nights. And then her confusion sort of increased. And then right on the heels of that came the COVID lockdowns. And so, I mean, she was very isolated. She had to have all her meals in her room, all the activities halted. The only people she saw were caregivers that came in periodically to just check on her. She couldn't see us. We FaceTimed.
So she knew enough to be able to FaceTime?
Yes, she was still using her phone at that point, texting, making phone calls, using an iPad to look at pictures and to FaceTime. But boy, she tanked in a hurry after the lockdown.
What did you notice? What changes did you see in your mom?
She started exit seeking. It was sundowning, and she started having difficulty with her phone. Eventually, she just couldn't use it at all. She would be confused about where she was. She would repeatedly ask me, could I come have lunch with her? Could I come pick her up to go somewhere? And I repeatedly tried to explain COVID and the restrictions, but she just could not. I think she couldn't find any reference point in her life for that. And there wasn't. I mean, there was nothing. And we when we had that conversation about going to assisted living, we sat her down and we told her, this is just going to be a new place to live, but we're still going to do family things. We're still going to pick you up for church. Nothing's really changing, except you're going to live in this place where you can get more help. And that was such a lie, because COVID changed all that. We weren't able to do those things that we said we would do.
Yeah.
And she just couldn't understand it. She just couldn't. And she would sneak out of her room and go across the hall to a friend's room who she had met. And then from the friend's room, she would call and ask us if we could come pick her up and get her home. And we would have to say, well, now, Mama, your room is right across the hall. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And just really, really confused. And in the midst of COVID, the assisted living asked us to provide sitters keep her from going out, leaving, which was
Like you would hire a private sitter to come sit with your mom, but it couldn't be any family member?
right. So because of the rules, their licensing, the rules, a caregiver, a professional caregiver or staff member could come and go, but a family member could not come into the building. So, it just was crazy to allow people in and out when we couldn't come in and out. We fortunately didn't have to do that too long.
Did staff members call you, like update you, like let you know what was going on?
Yeah, it's a great facility. They were just dealing with things they'd never dealt with before.
So what, like for the majority of the day, your mom would just be in her room alone?
Yes.
With the only interaction being somebody coming in to check on her, give her meds, or drop off her food. And besides that, it's done. Whatever she could do on FaceTime.
Yeah, that's it.
And then how long did it last, like with that situation?
I think it was about 4.5 months before they started allowing visits on the porch, outside visits. So it was 4.5 months before we saw her in person. The timing of that it was summer in Texas, and so that didn't last very long because it was just oppressively hot and not good for those residents to be out in the heat. But and then in September, after she'd been in assisted living for about 6 months, she reached the point where they felt she needed to move to the memory care wing, and so we moved her. They moved her. And she just really just never understood where she was, why she was there, how long she was going to be there. Very difficult.
And then in the memory care wing, how was your contact with her there?
Actually, the memory care wing was a really good move for her because of the nature of residents in memory care. They can't remember to stay in their room. A lot of them require assistance with eating. Not my mom, but a lot of them do. And so they really had freedom to move about the building, to interact. They were still doing activities over there. So it was really a much better situation for her. She was one of the highest functioning residents there at that time. Since then, not so much.
Okay.
Yeah, she's
continued. Did she continue to do the same things in terms of like asking you to come get her, and like still the same level of restlessness in the memory care facility as in the assisted living?
Yes. But visitation opened up. And so then I was able to go. I was a designated caregiver. I had to be COVID tested one time. That makes no sense.
Just one time for the rest of the time. Like you could visit as much as you wanted, like after that, but okay.
Yeah. So then, it's just following licensing requirements. And then I could come and go and see her. Still, now that's lifted and anyone can come and go. But we still cannot eat with her. I can't eat with her. I can't be in the common areas with other residents. We did have to visit in her room or maybe outside on the porch. So
are you able to like take her to church or take her home for a visit?
We've done that a few times. She's been out a few times after she was able to get vaccinated for COVID, and I was too. Then we started doing that some. We didn't do it a lot. We weren't, by then the sundowning was increasing. If they encouraged me if I was going to get her out to make it short and back by the early afternoon. so we did that. We've done that some. She hasn't gone back to church. I'm afraid that would be overwhelming. And now I cannot count that she can get herself ready and be ready to go. I never know when I visit what she'll be doing. She can no longer use the phone, so I can't call her anymore. She couldn't keep it charged. Couldn't keep up with it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And so when you bring her out, like on those few outings you've had with her so far, has she ever resisted or like going back to the memory care facility? Like, don't take me back there.
That was a concern. She's never said, don't take me back there. But when I got her back, then and went in with her, then she would be really confused about, look, all my stuff this looks just like my room. Well, this is your room. And she would just be so confused by that. So if I can time it where staff can meet me and take her and love on her, then it's a pretty smooth transition back.
Yeah.
But she's actually right now at a senior adult behavioral health hospital to deal with the aggression and agitation. So, we're going to have to get past that before we do much getting out. It's hard to know if the getting out is overstimulating, overtiring, and it contributes to that. It's hard to know what's making that worse.
So what is, when you say the aggression and agitation, I think you said, what specifically is she doing?
So maybe just not long after she moved to memory care, she was still exit seeking. She got pretty aggressive with the exit seeking, banging the door, kicking. She actually got through the door a couple of times. They had to make their magnet stronger so that they could keep her in. And then there have been several instances of her hitting or pushing another resident. She was combative with the staff when they would try to redirect her, but then she started hitting or pushing other residents, and that's really when they said, we've got to find a way to get control of that. They couldn't really identify triggers. So all your videos are so helpful and about playing detective and trying to find the triggers, but my hands are tied because I'm not there.
Do you think that they did a good work, put the time and dedication into trying to observe and figure out what is causing this?
I think to the degree they can, but they only have a certain number of staff members. Sometimes it happens during very busy parts of the day, and they just can't be one-on-one with her all the time. So sometimes they just have no idea what happened immediately preceding.
And do they have somebody on staff that's like a psychologist who is dedicated just to figure out what's causing behaviors or how to reduce behaviors?
No.
What about a traveling consultant that comes in? Maybe they're not full-time staff, but it's a person that is a consultant to that facility? No.
She now has a primary care provider who is a nurse practitioner and comes into the facility to see her there. And that's been super helpful, especially during COVID. Because if I took her out during the early part of COVID, she'd have to be quarantined for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
If we got back. And, so it's been great. He's been helpful in trying to, I don't know, they've tried some meds, but they haven't been able to figure it out. So.
Have they ever mentioned to you that if this isn't controlled, she wouldn't be able to stay there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's like these places that are supposed to be for people with kind of moderate to severe dementia, that's why they're on a locked unit, oftentimes have a lot of behaviors. Yet when they start showing them, the family gets told, if this is keeping up, we can't keep her here. So what options would you have at that point?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't even, I said, I thought memory care was memory care. I thought that because these type of behaviors are common in dementia, that's what you do. That's what you do. But apparently not all places have the same level of care, have the same level of qualified staff to deal with that. So I just didn't realize it. And we kind of came in it backward from assisted living to memory care within the same facility. So I never got the marketing spiel for memory care.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a pretty typical memory care facility. No consultant to come in and deal with behavior stuff. Staff probably not really that well trained or educated on how to deal with behavior stuff. The minute somebody starts having behavioral issues, which is pretty common in dementia, they're told, if this keeps up, we're not going to be able to keep your loved one here. So let's start piling on some medication and see what happens. Like that's just the typical way that it goes. And I'm going to try to calm down here and get back to your story. So right now she's in a facility. I'm guessing it's not like a long-term solution. It's probably like just to kind of to get her on some sort of medication regimen that would work and calm her down.
Yeah, just to stabilize her. They said 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
Hopefully, then she'll be able to stay at her facility. If not, then it's possible they'll say she can stay if you hire private sitters. But I just don't know that if I knew that her life expectancy was a year, then I would spend her money and hire the private sitters and just use it up for her care. That's what it's there for. But I don't know what's down the road, and I don't know what she'll need in the future. And so my hope is that she can return to her facility and have some quality of life and not hurt anybody.
Yeah.
I understand they do have to protect their other residents.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I understand. It's a good facility. I think they work hard to provide. It's just a difficult situation, a difficult problem.
Yeah. And you're in a position, like you said, it's a realistic concern to think, how much time is my mom going to be alive? How do I dedicate and plan and distribute the money to make sure it lasts that long? Otherwise, what are you going to do? If you run out of money, you might have to go to another facility that when you get on, other government funding assistance, which isn't really that much anyway. And it's a really big, it's impossible to predict how it's going to go and what it's going to be.
Right. I think my mom is probably in the later stage. She's not quite there at the end. She's still mobile. She's still pretty strong.
I was going to say, if they need to add a stronger magnet to a door, she's got some muscle and strength in her.
She does. But she has congestive heart failure. And it's just hard to know.
Yeah, it's really hard. How long has she been in this behavioral facility?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. And so she might have like another week there.
I think so.
Any indication on how she's doing with what they're trying with her?
I think it was tricky. I thought, I hate for her to have that behavior, but they need to see it.
Yeah.
in order to figure out how to help. So she has been showing them the aggressive exit seeking, but she has not been hitting anyone. So that's good. Maybe what they're doing is effective in that way, and maybe just the aggressive exit seeking is acceptable. She can't get out, but she might hurt herself trying.
I'd be curious at how big of a facility or how many people are in that behavioral facility versus the memory care facility.
There are 10. The census is 10. It's a senior adult, so it's 55 and over.
At the behavioral facility, census of 10. And what about the memory care facility?
About 30, 32.
Okay. So like, that's a big difference for, like, I'm just thinking, for your mom, you've mentioned several times, gets pretty overwhelmed. Like when you leave her, take her to a place, it's a lot going on. Like like that overstimulation piece might be something worth considering,
She didn't really show evidence of that at the time, but a few of these incidents have happened. I remember thinking, oh, we had a great day today. She's going to be tired and sleep well tonight. And that was the night that there was an incident.
So it could be, also there's the overexertion piece, like overstimulation, overexertion, or like over fatigue.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like finding that balance. Yeah. I hope they figure something out for her. What would be your option? Like, what would you do if they said, we can't keep her anymore? She's too aggressive.
Well, I guess we'd look into if there are other facilities that are better equipped for that. It's been really hard not to second guess our decision for her to go into a facility to start with, and not to second guess the decision to let her stay there through COVID. But we were just in a season of life where we just didn't have a real good option for caring for her in our home. But I guess that's a possibility that we would bring her to our home, and I'd have to have some help to because she is approaching those later stages with the beginnings of incontinence and some of those. And from what I've read, these aggressive behaviors and the confusion, the sundowning, all those things happen at home as well as in a facility. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that I'm going to eliminate those by bringing her to our home. It's just a matter of making sure we can provide the best care for her. And I haven't looked into other possibilities yet.
Yeah.
Because I'm hoping
they figure something out. I hope so too. Yeah. And it's totally normal to second guess, was this the best thing? What should, but that's just normal. And it's just like our brain likes to tell us things would have been better if we had made a different decision, but it's just as likely things could have been much worse, So you got to be very careful, balanced with your thinking there. Because I think a lot of people second guess or have guilt or doubt the decision that they made, that it's already made, you can't change right now, and we like to think it would have been better differently, but we don't know.
No. And really, the care course that I took was very helpful in that. And I knew that I was struggling and with my thinking about things. So, one of my takeaways was that my thoughts control my feelings, and I was confusing my thoughts with the facts. Yeah. So I learned a lot there. That was very helpful. And just I think you did a video recently that it was a question I asked you during the care course about being able to enjoy my life. I just was struggling to enjoy my life when she was not enjoying hers. And and you said it doesn't help her a bit if I don't enjoy my life. And so that was a great thing for me to learn. So, but I still struggle. I still up and down emotionally, still struggle.
What have been some other things that have been super helpful to you along the way, whether it's a resource, a company, a tool, a gadget, anything that has been helpful?
Well, you need somebody to talk to. My husband's been super supportive, but I was wearing him out. I felt like I was really wearing him out. And I had friends I could talk to, but I didn't want to always be Debbie Downer when I was with them. So I sought help through watching and reading everything I could about dementia, just really educating myself. And then I sought some counseling help through my church. I just was struggling with the physical, emotional, and spiritual aspects of this journey, and so that's helpful. I really one thing I did is I have a Pinterest page, so I would go and pin scripture verses that were encouraging to me, and at night before bed I would just pull up my page and read those verses, and that helped because I was really struggling with sleeping. So that was something I did before bed. But and then I worked to get to some attention to my physical self. I gained weight during COVID, probably like a lot of us did. So I worked to lose some weight and get healthier, just really trying to take care of myself a little bit because I was not much good to anybody in my family at that point.
Yeah. Those are important things. Friends, connection, your spiritual, your faith, doing something like the Pinterest board is wonderful just to kind of keep that in the forefront of your mind, especially as you're laying in bed, just to kind of let that sink in. And then, keeping your physical, like just getting your physical stuff back on track.
Yeah. And even though I wasn't doing the day-to-day care for my mom, it was consuming me. It was always in the forefront. She was always in the forefront of my mind, never in the back, always in the forefront. Never an hour hardly would go by that I wasn't thinking about her. And I was just trying to exhaust every possibility. Was there something I missed? Is there something more I could do? So, and still, I'm still doing that to some extent. I just, there is no fixing this. There is no,
Right. Yeah. It was recently, I think it was on my Instagram page. I just mentioned like your loved one's disease getting worse is no indication on you. Like there's no amount of good caregiving that's going to stop that from happening. It's going to happen. That's the hard part.
But we think that typically when we make decisions and we weigh everything out and we make the very best possible decision, it's with an expected good outcome. And that's just not the case.
Yeah.
Maybe you get a good outcome for a bit, but the disease continues to progress. And
I think they're like the ideal outcome. It's not possible, right? The ideal outcome, we have something that can cure this right now, and your loved one wouldn't have dementia, is just not even on the board of possibilities. So because the ideal outcome isn't there, like what's the next best thing? And the next best thing might be quality of life. And you made your decision for your mom with that in mind, with socialization, with allowing her to be safe, with having healthcare professionals around her, not only for cognitive reasons, but for some serious physical reasons too. So like, that's the next best thing. It's not what we would like, but that's what's possible. And that's the decision you made. Like, I think sounds like a really great decision.
Well, and I just wanted our relationship to be mother and daughter, and not the bossy caregiver.
Right.
That was really getting in the way. Yeah.
And something else I learned was like, after you've made your decision, right? Like you had your reasons for making the decision. You liked your reasons. And so you made it. And now we want to spend all this time in confusion and overwhelm and second guessing and doubt, which does nothing but make you feel awful, versus like having your back. Like, no, I know you did not take that decision lightly. You put a lot of thought into it. You pondered about it. You had the discussion with your mom about it. It's not like you just one day woke up like, we're going to do this. But when your brain goes to that loop that it wants to do, it's almost like we have to say, no, brain, I got it. I made this decision with my, highest part of the brain. I really put some thought into it. That is what I did, otherwise you're going to be stuck in that go around forever.
Yeah. And I have to keep from getting in that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I write things down. I write down the reasons that we made that decision, the pros, the cons. I write, it helps me to process it, to write it down.
Yeah.
But in the middle of the night when I wake up, it tends to rush back into my thinking and torture me a little bit.
Yeah. Holly, if you could give a recommendation or piece of advice to other Careblazers who are finding themselves in a position of a loved one with dementia, what would you tell them?
Well, I'd say get some help. That's going to look different for different people, but I don't think we're meant to do this alone. Whether it's getting information about dementia or getting counseling or connecting with friends or whatever, but get some help. And then I think I'm learning and working on not comparing my journey with somebody else's, not comparing my decisions. Everybody's situation is so different. And, but you're vulnerable to do that, especially when you read about what other people are doing. And, but we should just all respect each other's decisions. No guilt. Don't compare. That doesn't help. So
I love that. That's important. I think a lot of us look at other situations, but we don't have the full picture. We don't know what other families involved, what other responsibilities or challenges they have in their life, what other medical conditions the person with dementia might have. Like, somebody with dementia might not have exit seeking or aggression, right? It's all so different. So I love that. Just like not judging another person for their decisions, but also like not beating yourself up or putting yourself down for doing it differently. That's such good advice.
There's a saying that comparison is the thief of joy. And that's really, really true. It can steal your joy.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Is there anything I haven't asked about that you wanted to share? I can't really think of anything. It's a really difficult journey. I think it's been the most difficult season of my life. And I've had some other tough seasons, but I really wanted to honor my mom. I felt accountable to her. I felt accountable to my dad, who would have wanted the best for her. And really, I felt accountable to God,
because I knew he said we're to honor our parents. So that was one thing I had to get some help about, was what does it mean to honor your parents? Does it mean to sacrifice my whole life? Is that what it means? Or does it mean to just provide the very best that I can for them? So that was a struggle for me. But I just hope and pray that I'm honoring my mom.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a good question to ask yourself. What does it mean to honor your parents? And you get to have that answer. So, yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you, Holly, for coming on here and sharing your story with everybody. And I wish all the best for your mom. I hope they figure things out. She's able to go back to her memory care facility and start to feel better.
You too. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Bye.